everybody. Welcome to Inside Radio. I am your host, Danielle Agnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How is everybody? Happy week. I am super excited because I actually have a guest in the studio today, which is really cool. Because obviously it's usually just me and my angels talking here, but this is much more fun to have my guest today. So my guest today, some of you will know her from seeing her on my Instagram account at the Ascension Tour and, other things. Some of you will have noticed that she has been around as a dear family member. Yet today we are going to interview her not as somebody who worked on the Ascension Tour, not as somebody who's my dear family member, but we're going to interview her according to her incredible skill sets. God forbid we interview her as the professional that she actually is. So everybody, I want to introduce again to you, she's been on the show before, but I'm so excited to have back in the studio, Melissa Ciana. She is an herbalist, she's an intuitive, and she's an energy healer, and you might just know her as the Rad Dog Chick who does Ascension Tour videos with me also. However, we have Melissa here because today we're going to be talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is truths and myths in herbalism, because I think this is really, really important that we talk about truths and myths in herbalism, because if we're not talking about that, we have a lot of great people out there who don't understand that they're going into a certain field to accomplish certain things, and they think they can maybe buy the herbalism kit online through Amazon and become an herbalist. And I'm not obviously trying to dissuade people from their gifts and talents. I'm just simply saying there's a lot to it. Melissa, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
It's awesome to have you.
Yay.
This is so much fun. And I was actually trying to keep Melissa all day today. The pass up here in Bozeman has been snowed under, and it's actually melting now. So I have to give Melissa back to her family in Bridger. So I can't just keep her up in Bozeman all day. But she was here, and I'm so excited to have you talk about the myths and the truths of herbalism. So, when you even hear the myths and truths of herbalism, what does that bring up in you as an herbalist?
Gosh, it's a huge topic, I think. But, there's so many big corporate companies out there that are trying to sell something that it's the typical American thing, buy more of our stuff.
Right.
Which really, herbalism is not about that. Herbalism is about intrinsic healing. Yeah. Not getting someone to keep buying more of our stuff. It's about helping people to be well.
Yeah, that's true. And so just to give people a little bit of a background on you, how did you start in herbalism?
Oh my gosh. As a child growing up in the woods of Connecticut,
right on.
I spent a lot of time with my dad, hiking. We did a ton of mushroom hunting, which was super fun, and learning about trees, gardening. And then my grandmother on my mom's side was, looking back, I think she was probably extremely intuitive.
Right.
And was a plant person and a healer.
That's
as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So I learned from her and was just around plants my entire life. And even as a child, took a lot of solace from spending time in the woods with the trees and that kind of thing. And then went on to go to the University of Connecticut and get a degree in horticulture.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then later in my life, after I did 500,000 other things, I decided it would be a really great thing to be able to actually use those talents to begin helping people on a larger scale.
Well, that is amazing. And what I think is so cool here is that you've been doing this a long time, and there are different kinds of herbalism, if I'm not mistaken. There's like Eastern herbalism, American herbalism. So kind of for those who are listening today and who are interested in pursuing their healing arts through plant medicines, just give us a very basic breakdown of what that means. Would you consider yourself an Eastern herbalist, or what are you?
No. And Eastern herbalism or Chinese herbalism is a completely different thing than what I do. It's still about the magic and the qualities of plants, but I don't even know a lot of the Chinese herbs. So no, it's a completely different thing. The Chinese medicine talks about the qi and the yin and the yang and stuff that's probably the concepts are very similar to American herbalism, but we call them different things. We use different herbs. So
that's cool. So you would consider yourself an American herbalist?
Yeah. Yes.
That's awesome. And when we talk about the myths and truths of herbalism, that was sort of my frame up for what I have seen in the consumer culture of America. You know, we have some people who, like you said, we want people to buy things. So we convince them that, you know, okay, let me back up a little bit, Melissa. We do the same thing in the pharmaceutical companies say, well, if you're depressed, you need an antidepressant and its name is this. Or if you have a knee pain, you need knee pain medicine and its name is this. And over the years, over the last 15 years that I've done metaphysical work, I have watched individualized herbalism, which is somebody like yourself who really knows what they're talking about. And you go and you sit with them and they give you particular teas and tinctures and things like that, get replaced by online Google Herbal Doc, one size fits all prescriptions, if that makes sense. So let's first start our communication today, Melissa, with the myths of one-size-fits-all herbalism out there. And again, gang, here on Insight Radio, obviously, I am here to uphold everybody's walk who is listening. If you're a healer, you want to get started in it, rock on. If you're an herbalist and you want to get started in it, rock on. I am never here to tear anybody else's modality down. What I'm here to do today with an actual professional herbalist in our studio is to assist people in understanding how important it is that whatever they're studying, you know, to really establish some legitimacy for that. And also, Melissa, I've known people personally who've gone out and spent $10,000 in an herbalism, I'm not kidding, $10,000 in an herbalism certification online. And that came with $5,000 worth of blessed herbs and all this stuff. And then I've run it by other herbalist friends of mine who were like, oh my God, they just got stuck with a bunch of crap. So let's start with the myths of herbalism. What are some of the myths that you have found as a professional herbalist that float around out there?
I think there's several things. And I don't know if, as far as the myth goes, like there's many, many herbs that can address a particular physical symptom. Okay, so let's say that you have anxiety. There's
what? No, I don't even know what you're talking about.
That's just an example. We're not talking about you.
Of course not.
Okay.
Asking for a friend. Yes.
So let's say a person has anxiety.
Yes.
Yes. And there's probably 20 different herbs, or probably many more than that treat anxiety. So the question would be, which one is right for that particular person? And so the way that a lot of us understand that is that we use intuition to determine. So like somebody may come to me and 1 month a lemon balm is what they need for their anxiety.
Right.
But they come back in another month and it might be something totally different. It might be passion flower. It could just.
So why though? Why is that? Why is that?
The why is that our body, mind, and spirit is so connected. There's no separating what's going on with our body, mind, and spirit, right? So think about it like, I explain this to people, like if you get nervous, you might have a certain spot on your body that itches sometimes, right? Or when you have your heart broken, your heart literally hurts.
Oh yeah.
So
I've had that
body,
happen.
The body is so connected. So every physical thing that happens to us, it's funny because I used to say almost every physical thing that happens to us is connected to our spirit or emotions, but it's not true. Every single physical thing that happens to us is so connected to our spirit and our emotional state that there's no separating it.
That's very true.
And so that makes it impossible to have a prescription for a specific herb that's going to serve a population.
So let me just recap that. So if I'm reading online that if I'm an herbalist, then St. John's wort is what I give for people. That was big in the 90s, for depression, which, by the way, you can't combine with tomato acid, apparently. But anyway, we learned that later.
Or other antidepressants.
Or other antidepressants, it'll tank you. Mm-hmm. So, but St. John's wort is my one size fits all. So I order on my discount through my $10,000 Herbalism certification. I get a discount on this particular feeder brand of herbs through this site, and I order 50 million pounds of St. John's wort because that's for anxiety. So a myth would be that one herb fixes it all for all people, just like one ibuprofen is going to kill all inflammation.
Right. So it could be that a person we're using anxiety as an example. Maybe a person has anxiety because of a specific experience. Like maybe they have a lost love. Maybe they are heartbroken. And so maybe some of those issues are coming from their heart.
Right.
And it's not just like a mind anxiety thing going on in their head that could be treated by a pharmaceutical antidepressant or even St. John's wort. Maybe it's their heart chakra.
So you're saying that to be an herbalist, even though you're saying that you are an American herbalist, Chinese herbalists deal with qi and other flows, and the heart system in Chinese herbalism isn't just the heart, it's a whole system. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about American herbalism being different and dealing with different words. So you're still, however, dealing with energetics, it sounds like, even in American herbalism.
Absolutely. I think there's no denying that we're made of energy. Right. There's no denying that we have energy centers throughout our body. And those definitely play a huge role in how we feel physically and emotionally, spiritually. I mean, we keep coming back to the fact that there's no separation.
Yeah. And so if there's no separation, so when I have a client sitting in front of me, I translate what these angels have to say. When you have a client that's sitting in front of you, what is some of your translation process that helps you separate the myth and truth out of herbalism? How do you translate from a client what they require?
I generally cannot get the angelic translation as quickly as you can. I do.
One of my channels on my Sirius.
Yeah, my channel is not that open. But generally, I would like to sit with them. I like to sit with them and I like to have them tell me what's going on in their life. So they may come to me with a physical issue. It could be, like a bad knee or something like that. Right. And I want to know how that happened and I want to know how long they've had it and what the symptoms are. But I also want to know what else is going on in their life. So it's this whole process talking about what do you do for a living? Are you happy doing that for a living? What's your life like at home? And so, like, for instance, if it is an issue with a knee,
right,
and I want to know which side of the body it's on.
And why do you want to know that?
Because oftentimes, usually, the right side of the body represents moving forward, and the left side of the body represents issues from the past.
Wow.
So it's crazy how every time it shakes down to something that's going on in their life. So say it's their right knee, and our knees support us. They help us with our forward momentum.
They represent flexibility in moving forward or backward. So they are about mobility and a choice in flexibility. I know that from the angels.
Right.
I'm not an herbalist, but that's something the angels talk about.
I don't think that those kind of things are things we learn from being an herbalist.
Okay.
It's just things that we know from experience and things that I just intuitively know. So
here's something that I think is important to bring forward, though. So if I'm going to be an herbalist and I don't learn about the energies of the body, do you feel that provides enough of a background to actually sit with the client without having any knowledge of the energetics of the body?
I think a knowledge helps. But on the other hand, if you're open to your intuitive abilities, you that's going to come through anyway. So probably that's hard. That's a hard question, Like, I don't know how much pre-knowledge I had of the energetic centers of the body before I started doing this.
But you have them, though. I mean, you do have them. So however you came on to those, and it's really interesting because if you never technically studied any of that, That could be a clairsentient ability, a claircognizant ability. And what I think is so fascinating about that is information that I receive all the time from the angelic realm. So my question really is, regardless of how you get it, whether you channel it, whether you learn it, whatever, how important on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being it really has nothing to do with my field, and 10 being, oh my God, I couldn't do this without this. Where would you rate understanding the energetic flow of the body when sitting with a client in an herbalism consultation?
I couldn't do it if I didn't understand it.
So it's a 10.
It's a 10. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you're listening and you want to get started in herbalism, it's also important, it sounds like, to study the energetics of the body or to honor your intuition as you did, Melissa, in those areas.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important.
So could we say that it's a myth? Could we say it's a myth that you don't need to understand anything about the energies of the body in order to fully activate the herbalist, application?
I would say so. I would also say that to assume that herbalism is just about treating physical symptoms is a myth as well.
Oh, okay. Great, because we're in the myth section.
Right.
I'm watching the clock over here, and we're going to spend the first half of this podcast on the myths, and then we're going to take the second half and do the truths. So it's a myth to... What else? What other myths do we have? I'm fascinated by myths because, we've got so much marketing hoopla out there that's just not reflective of what's actually true.
Another myth might be that an herbalist has to know everything about every single herb and plant. That's a myth.
Is that like a psychic needs to be able to read your mind before you ever say a word?
Right. So,
God. That kills me.
The example for that is so many times somebody will come into the store and I'll just know what herb is right for them. But then, I know what it is, but then I usually check myself.
Yeah.
Just because I want to make sure that I'm right. And I'm always right. It just and there's been times that I've even known that a particular herb would work and I'd look it up and the information that comes up immediately doesn't include the person's symptoms.
Right.
And I'll start second guessing myself and I'll be like, whoa, maybe that's not right, but I'm sure it's right. And then if I dig a little deeper, I'll find a couple of examples that'll say, well, in, these few cases, this herb can also address this symptom. So, and it was right, and it ends up helping the person because it's the particular thing that's right for that person.
And what led you to that choice?
I just know.
You just know. and so I'm going to add to a little bit of that. So you did study herbs.
Yeah.
But you also, you can feel it. So you do have a knowledge base that you're drawing on. And then you're allowing that intuition to lead that knowledge base. Would that be
That's
fairly
true.
accurate?
And I also check myself.
Let's talk about checking yourself.
So, I always, if I intuitively have an idea that a person needs a particular herb, then I will generally look it up and make sure I'm right because I don't want to hurt anybody. And it's a process, and it's a process of learning to trust your intuition.
Right. And let's talk about that a little bit. What has your process been like with that?
Wow. Okay. So, everyone has intuition, right?
Yes.
Everyone
that's totally
does.
True.
This isn't something that's unique to me. Everyone has it.
It's true. It's a true thing.
Yes. And we've talked a lot in some of the classes that I've taught about how to open your intuition. Because
that's awesome.
In herbalism, that is huge.
Yeah.
Like all the great herbalists use intuition. They pay attention to the energy of the plant and the energy of the person, and they intuitively know what's going to work. So the process has kind of been like paying attention to those little voices inside of your head. Like if somebody asks me for something to address a symptom, an herb pops in my head. And we're taught in our modern world to just ignore that stuff and look it up or base your choices on what you've learned from a book.
Right. Or have it be somebody else's experience because you are not enough of an authority.
Right.
Because we got to give away our power in America. That's what we do here.
So the first step is to hear the little voice or pay attention to for me, sometimes it's like a picture of an herb.
Wow.
Yeah. That pops into my head. And don't brush that off as nonsense. and pay attention to it. So I think that's the first step in anything in life, any sort of intuition in your life, to start paying attention to those little things that are popping into your head, because we all have it.
So it would be then a truth, even though we're not to our truth section yet, but a truth in herbalism is you're working with the energetics as well as just the chemical knowledge base of the plant. You're working with the energetic resonance. That sounds like a truth in your field.
That's a truth. Do we want to talk about that now? Because that's huge.
It is huge. Let's just go for it. Yes.
Okay. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to where your herbs are sourced from. It's so important. Like organic, yeah, that's a catchphrase, and that's important. That goes without saying. But like, who grew them? Were the people that grew them taken care of? Were the communities that they work in taken care of? Is the land that they grew the herbs on taken care of so it's healthy? All of that goes into the energy of anything we put in our body, herbs, but everything else we put in our body too.
Wow. Wow. I really never thought about that with plants. I've thought about it with animals because I'm a meat eater. So I've thought about people being treating ethically their animals and making sure that they have humane diets, humane range, humane way of killing them, all of these things. I never thought about it with plants. So you're saying, which makes total sense, because in the area of energetics, we know that energy is not destroyed, it's transferred. So you're saying that it's wonderful if the label says organic, yet if you can do a little bit of research to find out where it came from, how it was grown, the land it was grown on, that this all goes 100%, which makes complete sense to me, into the healing resonance or non-resonance of that plant, yes?
Right, exactly. And it comes down to trusting the person that you're buying it from.
Wow.
Asking the questions of the person. And if it's a person, it's so much better than if it's just like some big company that doesn't have a person to talk to.
Do you grow your own herbs then?
Very few. I would like to grow more. Yeah, I think. And if you think about it like this, it's just this herbs, plants, everything we use plants for are this giant gift that the earth is giving us to use for our well-being. And so it's our responsibility to take care of the earth that they're coming from. But and that goes into the energy of the actual plant too that we're using, whatever it's for. If it's for something that we ingest or something that we use for smoke cleansing or anything, even if it's a tree that we sit under or a flower that we grow, those all have an energetic effect on us as well.
Do you teach on this stuff?
Sometimes, yes. I love to teach.
Do you do like classes, or are you online, or how do you teach about this?
So I do classes. I do occasional lectures at different events, and we do classes at our store in Bridger.
In Bridger, Montana?
Yeah.
Okay.
For all different things. But, it doesn't matter what I'm doing a class on, whether it's essential oils or making your own plant scents or making smoke cleansing wands. We do that. The first part of the talk is always about the energetics of the plant, because that's the most important thing.
So let me recap for those who might be listening or who just turned in. Our guest is Melissa Siana. She is owner of Vintage Apothecary in Bridger, Montana. She is an energy intuitive. She is an herbalist. And she is a healer, actually. And so as we go through this discussion, we're talking about the truths and myths in herbalism. And what I find so fascinating about this, sister, is that you have this awareness that the energies of the plants, it's transference. If the plant is traumatized, it transfers trauma to a person. Now, we think in terms of plant life as being like, there's certain companies out there, Monsanto, that, use Roundup on everything, and it kills everything and it poisons everything. So we think in terms of chemical poisons. Yet with plants, we don't oftentimes think of emotional poisons or energetic poisons. So what it sounds like to me that you are addressing is, if you're going to get these herbs, if you're going to work with them, do your best to research just to make sure that people are doing what they can. Because it may be a situation where people may not, they may be able to, they may have to grow herbs under certain conditions, and that's the best they've got, and they're organic, but maybe there's trauma in how they're harvested, or maybe the people harvesting them have a lot of dissonance or trauma. You know what I think is interesting? I noticed on your Facebook page, what is your Facebook page, love?
It's Vintage Apothecary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you go to Facebook, Vintage Apothecary, like Melissa, she's always
Please,
putting up.
thank you.
Oh, it's so cool. She's always putting up really cool videos and educational blurbs and whatever. And one of the things that I've noticed that you do, and maybe you could explain this a little, is I've seen you say, I'm making, and I probably have the product wrong, and please excuse me because I'm not an herbalist. Yeah, it's like juniper oils or something. With juniper, I harvested myself. So if I say I'm somebody, I'm starting in herbalism and I'm going to go harvest something, what is the process if I've got to make sure that my head's on straight, and how can I double check where I'm getting it from? And I mean, do you have to ask the plant for it? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, actually you do.
You do?
You do.
I was totally kidding.
No,
oh my God.
it's true. So
Okay.
when I'm harvesting something, I am very careful. I mean, we have an abundance of beautiful herbs here in Montana that we can use for various things. So if I go out there and I choose to harvest something, I'm extremely respectful of the plant. I always go to a location where the plants look very healthy and where there's a lot of them.
So you're not like going to the one little plant and just raiding it to death.
Right. So I am going, like, if I'm harvesting juniper, I might choose one piece off each plant and just continue walking. And every time I harvest from a plant, sometimes I say it out loud. Sometimes I say it in my head. May I harvest this?
How can you tell if the answer is no?
Just because it's intuition, just like we were talking about, and pay attention to the voices, the little voices in your head.
So you hear a little voice that says, "Not today, sister. I'm not doing well."
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sometimes, not often, because I try to choose the healthiest plants, but sometimes I get a no. And so then I just move on to the next one.
And it's interesting because I bet if you scientifically ran a panel on that plant, maybe it's got something going on. Maybe it's got a bark beetle that's affecting the properties of what you would be harvesting, or maybe it just isn't in the mood to get it cut into. Who knows?
Maybe. And then at the end, after I complete my harvest, I always thank, and I usually say that out loud. I say, thank you for this harvest. It's for healing my family, myself, and other people.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's like, the gratitude is such a huge part of the energy. And talking about energy of things, another way that, like, the whole concept of the energy of plants goes even further with the person that made the thing that you have. So if I make a juniper oil myself, while I'm making it, I'm grateful. I'm putting love into it. I'm thinking about all the people that it's going to heal and help. That's vastly different than buying a commercial oil that was processed in a machine. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that too is when we think about the person who makes it, I have had teas that you have made for me, Melissa, that have kicked ailments that I've had that traditionally I would have gone to the doctor for because that was the only way I could get rid of that ailment. And I normally don't, gang, I'm really super lucky. I don't get really super sick with stuff. So I just want that out there. Yet, pH issues, whatever issues, things you need a little help with, you've given me materials that I've taken. And I know you, obviously. I mean, you're awesome. Yet I know where your heart is coming from with all of that. I have another really good friend of mine. His name is Jim Niemeyer. And you know Jim.
Yeah, Jim's awesome.
Jim's freaking great. And Jim Niemeyer is it Jade Wellness? Gosh darn it, Jim, I'm sorry. I'm spacing out on your business name there. But it's in Billings, Montana. And he and his wife, Stephanie Niemeyer, they are herbalists. And so what I think is fascinating here is that he works in Eastern medicine and Eastern herbs.
Yes.
And there have been times when I've gone to certain things for Jim and he's given me, it looks like a freaking Hogwarts experiment, man. All these weirdo, funky looking Chinese herbs and whatever that I'm supposed to make a, Harry Potter tea out of and drink. Yet I think it does matter. Intention matters in a healer. Whether you were doing a reading for someone, whether you were harvesting juniper for someone and making an oil, intention matters. So if you think, if you're a healer or you're an herbalist and you want to go into this field, and just to summarize, and you think that it's just going to be like a Western doctor, where you sit down and say, okay, my elbow hurts. Well, here's, take your ibuprofen and call me in the morning because you're dealing with the elbow. What you're telling me, Melissa, is that herbalism deals with the entire energetic system, not only of the body, it deals with the intention in which you deliver the information. It entails with being responsible with the energies in which you are harvesting or mixing, perhaps a tea for somebody. So your intention, pretty much, if I'm to understand you correctly, has got to be locked on in gratitude or in humility or service from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's two things that came to mind. One is that there's so much more involved in the process than me just giving you some tea to drink and it fixed whatever was bothering you. Because think about it. Do I ever give you herbs to take and not ask you what's going on in your life?
No, you always ask me what's going on.
Yeah, we always. Yep. It's just this connected process that we can't separate. If I'm going to give you herbs, I'm going to help. I also want to help you figure out, it's a holistic thing. Yeah. Why that happened. And the last time it happened, what was going on in your life. And maybe we can connect it and figure it out.
Right. Right. And so, on the line of plants, it's fascinating because I know a lot of herbalists who also are healers or they are shaman or whatever. And there are different sage beliefs that I find to be very, very interesting. Different beliefs in sage, how it can be used, what it's for. I've had certain people say, well, you can use this sage for this, but not for this. Certain people could say, well, I can burn this sage, but you can't give it to people. So can you help us debunk some of the sage issues out there?
That is a hugely controversial topic in the field of herbalism. So this is simply my take on it. There's so many opinions. It is true that the white sage that is traditionally used for smoke cleansing comes from the American Southwest. Now, that has become so popular that it's actually been being shipped all over the world for people to use for smoke cleansing, and it's affecting the population of white sage in our country, which is not cool.
Oh man, okay, so we're over harvesting this white sage.
Over harvesting it, yeah, and it's being done commercially without respect and gratitude, and so the things that about smoke cleansing that I'd like to say is every culture all over the world uses smoke cleansing. Right.
Well, look at the Catholics and frankincense and myrrh and all the swinging around.
They use frankincense in the Middle East for smoke cleansing.
Yeah.
In Italy, they use herbs like rosemary and the herb that we know is culinary sage.
Oh, wow.
All over the world. It's something that is done because it works.
Right.
Because it actually fights bacteria in the air in your home and it raises the vibration.
So it's like energetic Lysol, and it literally is herbal Lysol to a degree.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
So, and if you think about it, over the centuries, people weren't importing special herbs to smoke cleanse with, right?
No.
They were using the stuff that grew where they lived.
Right.
Right? Like frankincense in the Middle East. And here in Montana, for instance, the Native Americans were using the sage that grows abundantly all over the whole state, which is not white sage.
Now, I'm going to put a pin in that for a second, because I remember picking a bunch of sage. I was a kid, and I picked a whole bunch of sage from a particular area that I felt the ground be very sacred on. And the sage kind of gave it up. You could feel it. Like you said, the sage was like, okay, you can go ahead and take this here. And I bundled that sage up, and I still have it. I probably did that, almost 30 years ago, and I still have those sage bundles, and I still use them. They're super dry now, because they're 30 years old, yet I still use them, and they're pretty magnificent. And so what is that sage that we have?
So with anything with plants, I love to be able to talk about botanical names, because that is what allows us to actually distinguish one plant from another. So not that everyone wants to hear the Latin.
No, I love the Latin. Are you kidding? That's awesome.
This just clears it up a little bit. So our culinary sage is a salvia.
Okay.
White sage that grows in the American Southwest that's being over-harvested is a salvia.
Okay.
The sage that grows here in Montana, despite the fact that we call it sage, is not a salvia. It's an artemisia. So it's 100% different plant than white sage that just happens to have a lot of the same purification and cleansing properties.
Okay, so what we call sage is not technically actually, is it energetically similar, but chemically it's not.
It's
to this other.
botanically a different plant.
Wow.
So,
okay, so
yeah.
I what was it called? A salvia?
Yeah, so white sage is a salvia.
Okay.
And culinary sage that grows in Italy is a salvia. But our sage is an artemisia.
Okay, artemisia is what I've got bundles and bundles
Yes.
of.
Yeah.
And that stuff works like you would not believe.
It does. And that's what the Native Americans here used for millennia, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Also, just like on an interesting botanical aside, for those of you that are familiar with the plant mugwort or the plant wormwood, which are very important plants in herbalism, they are botanically closer to our Montana sage. Those three plants are all artemisias.
Wow.
So yeah, so they have some of the same qualities. So wormwood, which also grows here in Montana, is a cleansing plant, and it's often used for cleansing the body of parasites. And it's also the thing that flavors absinthe.
I was just going to say, well, I know wormwood from absinthe.
That's
personally.
right. So that is a very similar, like the twin of our Montana sage.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So botany's cool, right?
Botany's freaking cool, man. This is cool.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, so if I am going to my standard metaphysical store, that's usually white sage, right? That they've got bundled up in there. However, if I go out into the prairie of Montana and I ask the sage plant to cough it up, that's actually the sage for me personally that is far more sacred. Now, here's an interesting point to what you're making. I've had people give me gifts of that white sage. It's from the Southwest, and it's wonderful, and I'm always so grateful to receive a gift. However, when I burn it, it doesn't feel, from a spiritual physics perspective, it doesn't feel quite the same way to me as, did you call it the artemisia? Okay, the artemisia or the sage that we talk about in Montana, little bitty, it doesn't have the big long leaves. It's got
Right.
little bitty shorty leaves on it.
Yep.
It smells like sage, but it's different, you know? That plant to me, when I am doing healing work, especially if I'm getting, if I'm drawing lines in the sand with elementals, if I'm dealing with any elementals, they respond better to that sage. And really, I don't use sage to clear dark entities. I never have. I use that angelic energy to say, come on, man, go somewhere else. But that artemisia, is that right?
Yeah.
I keep saying it wrong
Yep,
in
that's
my
right.
head. The artemisia or the Montana sage is what I would use here dealing with elemental beings.
Well, that makes 100% sense because that is the sage that the elementals here in Montana live among. Right?
Right.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Probably if you were dealing with elementals in the American Southwest, white sage would be your deal.
It would be. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. When I am dealing with any elemental occupation that comes across as negative, because a lot of people, let me just preface this, a lot of people mistake elemental occupation as a demonic presence in their home. They can come across as little black streaks or dark shadows. They can throw plates. They can feel very disruptive or violent. Sometimes they growl. People can mistake an elemental for a demonic being. And demons, I mean, you can clear dark energy with any sage. Demons aren't specifically going to be chased out by sage. They're going to be removed by the positive intention of somebody smudging, whether it's with the artemisia sage-like stuff or the white sage or whatever. However, the elementals 100% will respond to the plant that you pick from that area.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And it's interesting because I teach a whole class on this. Different plants, there's so many plants that we can use for smoke cleansing. So many.
Really? And
Yeah.
Now, the two that I know of, because again, I'm not an herbalist, right? And I'm generally working with the angelic resonance, which is energy. So I'm not typically burning something. Yet sage is what I know to smudge with. And sweetgrass, which I know sweetgrass actually calls in, apparently, and tell me if I'm wrong about this. I had a Native American friend inform me that sweetgrass in their ceremony calls in good energy.
Yeah. Yes.
And, okay. And then sage is a neutralizer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So sage kind of cleanses, and then sweetgrass is like adding the positive energy back into your space. Sweetgrass is another thing that is a native plant to Montana, but very uncommon. So it's another thing that care should be taken when purchasing it, that it's purchased from. The magic of sweetgrass is the way that the Native Americans actually braid it and the story that goes with that. And it's just such a sacred Native American thing that I would only buy braided sweetgrass from a Native American person.
So it's the manner in which they are weaving the energy in. If I'm to understand
so again, that's a whole thing about the energy of a product.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. God. Okay, so what else can you burn? I'm just curious.
Okay, so, we were talking about different parts of the country where they burn different things.
Right.
So, for instance, in our home, we burn frankincense almost exclusively because frankincense is a Middle Eastern plant.
Right.
And we have children in our home that are of Middle Eastern descent.
Right.
And so it just seems appropriate for us, right?
Well, sure.
But there's so many things, and different plants, even no matter what you're using them for, have different spiritual qualities. So you can add, it's really common to add some rose in a sage bundle.
Like rose petals?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Rose
cool.
petals, because they're pretty.
Well, they are pretty.
Yeah. But rose is our heart chakra plant, right? Think about it.
Wow.
It's the plant of love.
Yeah.
It smells beautiful. And so if you are wishing to bring love into your life, rose might be an appropriate thing to add to your sage bundle.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. Or like I'll see oftentimes people will take a seashell or a bowl and they'll have a little piece of charcoal and they will sprinkle sage or whatever else on the charcoal and it kind of burns. Mm-hmm. Does the charcoal affect the saging at all, or is that not really a big deal?
That's such a good question, because charcoal is not those charcoal discs that
they're like little
burning.
discs. Yeah.
That's I use them. I'm not going to lie. But that's not a natural product. So when you light them, it's got like some, I would say like they must dip them in lighter fluid or something, because they just catch right away and they smell funny. If you notice that first wave of smoke when you light them doesn't smell that great.
Yeah.
So, you might want to light it outside so you don't have to get that in your house. I use them too, so I'm not... it's something that we use, but some of my Native American friends don't use them, and they burn smudge blends. So one of my friends, Josiah Huggs, an amazing guy, he'll like take a little dish and make a little tiny fire with sage twigs.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
He's so cool. And then he'll take the smudge blend, and he likes to buy it from me. He'll take the blend of smudge herbs and sprinkle it on that little fire.
Oh, that's cool.
How he does it. So, the charcoal discs are very convenient.
Yeah.
But there's other ways that you can do it if you don't want to get that caustic stuff in your air.
Well, okay. So we've covered energetics. We have covered asking permission of plants. We've covered intention, gratitude. We've covered over harvesting, like with sweetgrass and with white sage, And just, like you said, sweetgrass grows in Montana, but it's not super common. Mm-hmm. So, just kind of keeping in mind where it's coming from, how it's braided. Yeah. That whole thing has a whole intention to it. Mm-hmm. So if I come to you and I say to you, Melissa, I've got pretend I'm married to a man. My husband and I are fighting. And it's been awful in our house. I've noticed that my lupus has gotten worse since we've been fighting. And my husband, he's drinking more and whatever because he's sick of it too, of the fighting. Yet I really feel like there's this heaviness in my house, and my illness, my physical body hasn't given me, I need some help. So actually what I'm here for, Melissa, is I need help sleeping. Well, how can you help me?
Wow. Okay, this would probably entail a lot more conversation, but for each individual person, of course, it's likely to be a different solution.
Right.
So we would look at probably short term, I got to get this lady some sleep.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Because you can't even function on working on the other stuff in your life if you're not sleeping.
Right. And your body can't heal.
So we'd figure out probably an herbal tea for sleeping that might include some relaxation stuff. If she's having pain from her lupus, we could include something for pain too.
Okay.
So she'd probably receive a blend of herbal teas. And we talk about things possibly that she could do in her life. So a lot of times it's an activity in addition to herbal medicine that she needs to do to help deal with the stuff that's going on with her husband. Maybe she's got something going on like maybe this is all stemming because she hates her job. Maybe it's a life path issue because it usually is.
Yeah, right. Okay.
You know? And so maybe she needs to make some changes in her everyday life, or maybe I don't know.
But you would start with sleep. And the reason I threw you that compound problem.
That was hard. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome, sister. I knew you could do it. Because here's the thing, gang. You know, as healers, nobody's coming in. I mean, sometimes someone is coming in to say, I have cancer. I need help treating my cancer. Yet I've noticed with healers, Melissa, that people come in with, okay, here is my issue. Here is issue A. This is what I think the problem is. Yet I've got this massive trove of other issues that are compounding energetically, psychologically, spiritually, my physical symptom. Yet I'm here to talk to you, the herbalist, to treat my physical symptom. Mm-hmm. And the reason I threw that little problem at you there was that obviously you can't just treat the sleep. I mean, you'll start with the sleep, but what you said was, I'm going to start with the sleep because without her sleeping, she can't address the other issues. You know, so I think what I got out of that is that as an herbalist, you're hearing everything, yet with you, what would you say is the biggest earmarker symptom first? If I come in with a list like that, how would you, do you rely off mental? Do you rely off of a database? Do you rely off of how the person feels? What is your marker to treat first?
Probably pain and sleep. But it's even with this woman, if there's so many things like that going on with her, I want to talk to her more. I want to know what she's eating because dang, you know as well as I do that a lot of that stuff is diet related.
Oh my God, I know.
And I probably with her would want to do some energy work with her too.
So let's talk a little bit, you know, about energy work and the type of energy work you do, because the healers that I know, the herbalists that I know are also energetic healers. You know, Jim Niemeyer, who we were talking about earlier in Billings, Montana, he's also an energetic healer. So I would be interested in you telling our listeners, how do you actually instigate the type of energetic healing that you bring forward with clients as combined with your herbalism?
So a lot of times people come to me just because they want energy work. But if it's somebody that comes with multiple problems, like this example that you suggested, it's easier for me to figure out what's going on with them if I can feel their energy in a more complex way.
Right.
So, I mean, the way it generally works is a conversation. We always start with a conversation.
Right.
I want to know how they're feeling, what's going on with them, what parts of their body hurt. I mean, are you talking about the energy healing process, right?
Yeah. Like how do you do it? Yeah.
So then they lay down on the massage table, make them as comfortable as I can. And I always make sure to tell them that whatever happens is okay. So if they want to talk through the session, that's great because that's how some people release their energy. If they want to go to sleep, that's okay too. If anything happens that they want to tell me about during the session, tell me. You know, and so then I actually move through their chakras, starting with their crown chakra.
Yeah.
And I spend as much time putting love into that chakra and building the energy and feeling the flow of the energy through their body. And then I move to the next one. So it could be, depending on the chakra, one might take 20 minutes and the other one might take 2.
Just depending on which one needs a little more kick in the pants.
Right. But that helps me. So then I work through all the chakras to finish with the process.
Right.
And then work through, like, energy in the body is like a stream flowing in a creek, right?
Yeah.
The water flowing in a creek. And if there's a blockage, let's say you pile a bunch of rocks in the creek in one spot, it stops the energy flow, stops the water flowing, and it backs up the stream.
Right.
So let's say, like, your heart chakra has something going on in there that's blocking it. Well, you're probably going to have, like, some energy blockage in your throat and on ups. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So in addition to making sure the chakras are all feeling the right energy, I want to make sure the energy is flowing in a healthy way through the body.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And energy, you can push it. You can move it with your hands.
Well, yeah, and if you're somebody who can feel the energies, you can move it or push it with your hands. And it's a really interesting electromagnetic effect from one polarity of the body to the other, from one pole of one body to another pole of another body. And we can literally drag that energy field around, which is really cool.
Yes.
It's cool.
So that's part of the process. The other part would be addressing other parts of their body, like they have a knee that hurts, or they have even a wound that needs healing.
Right.
Then specifically focusing on those areas. Again, for me, and everybody's different, and every energy healer works differently. But for me, it's all about the energy of love. And it's just pushing love into that space. Even when you're getting the chakras flowing well, it's all about pushing love into that chakra until it feels bright and shiny and perfect. And then you move on to the next one. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with, for instance, a wound. It's pushing love into that wound, and at the same time visualizing the space as being healthy. So if you have a wound, I'm picturing your perfect skin.
Wow.
And or your bones knitting together, or all knitted together and perfect, while I'm pushing love in there. So
you kind of allow the love to kind of do the work. You put the intention behind it. And, I just kind of wanted just a little light sample platter on that one, just because there are people who go into herbalism that are very talented healers, yet they themselves they feel like the herbs need to do all the work. Like the pharmaceutical needs to do all the work. And that as an herbalist, that they are here to diagnose and just get the person the right kind of herbs so they can get in there and do what they got to do. I'm sure that's one part of it. Yeah, what we got to see with you just now is that, you're incorporating that love intention, you're moving and working through the body, and you're able to tie it all together.
And the other part of that work, just to wrap it up, is that feeling what's going on in their chakras helps me figure out what is going on in their physical body.
Whoa.
So because again, everything's connected. So the energy in your body, the way you feel is so connected to the physical things that are happening to you. So that helps me. This woman comes to me with all these things going on. Maybe it turns out that, she has a broken heart because her husband's drinking and her heart chakra needed work. I can feel that. I can feel that when I work on her, and I can actually help it to feel better. That's with energy work.
Awesome.
But it also helps me diagnose in a way what herbs I think will be helpful to her. So I would send her home in addition to whatever else I thought she needed, with maybe some rose tea.
Oh wow, for the heart chakra.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you guys can see, as you're listening, gang, you can see that this is a multi-layered discipline. So that I could say perhaps a myth of herbalism is it's 100% all about the herbs. That's a big part of it. Yet it's about the vibration, the intention. It's about where they're grown. It's about the energy in them. And Melissa, we're boiling down on time here. And I want to make sure that we get this in. Do you think plants actually have what we like to call magic in them? Or do you think that's a funky little catchphrase that we give to energy in plants?
I think that magic and energy are closely connected. I think that plants are full of magic. And if you want to call it energy and that makes you more comfortable, I'm so cool with that. I like to call it magic. I mean, what about I can go and sit underneath a tree and I can feel that tree just loving me. That's
wow.
And it's energy, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But that's magic.
So the reason I put it out that way is that there are many beliefs out there that take the idea of magic and throw it into the world of non-comprehensible mysticism. In other words, like the transfiguration of Christ. We talk about if you're a Christian person and Easter comes and you talk about Christ raising, the priest can never say exactly why Christ raising from the dead spiritually augmented the humans that were left below. They just say, well, it's the mystery of faith. It's the mystery of faith. And the reason I put it to you that way is obvious. I mean, I know you, so I know how you think about this stuff. Yet I also can tell you that there's a lot of people out there that I have witnessed who talk about the magic of plants, and they give 100% of the power to the plant in a mystical way that literally they don't have as much to do with the process because it's all the plant. It's just this magical transcendent thing that's in the plant. So how would you describe and if that's a thing that you believe, because I do believe there's things that we can't, I mean, I can't tell you exactly why it is that angels are temporal beings. I think that's kind of magical, and there's things that are magical. Yet when I hear magic, a lot of times I also, that can fall into a bailiwick for people, that they must be Wiccan to use that particular plant, or that they must be in a witch practice or a spell casting practice to use the magic in that plant. And I've seen herbalists go down that road too. They're like, if you're going to be calling this plant magic, you better be a 6th level druid. You better be a Wiccan practitioner in order to fully use the plant magic, because you don't know how to wield the magic. So when you say plant magic, what is your personal definition of magic with the plant?
I think that plants, as we've talked about already, every plant has its own intrinsic qualities. And some of those qualities are physical and how they affect us physically. And other ones are spiritual or emotional and how they affect us spiritually or emotionally. And I think that the word magic might scare some people. So if it does, use a different word, because plants have these qualities no matter what you call it. And I think if that's a mysterious thing, so be it. But it's a fact that they do have spiritual qualities. They do affect us.
So for you personally, when you use the word magic, it's more about referencing the ethereal, non-quantifiable qualities that those plants have, as opposed to you have to be a Wiccan to use this plant.
Yeah. No. The universe, Mother, Father, God, however you refer to it, put these plants here on this earth to help us in all ways. And they're for everyone.
There you go. Okay, that's what I thought. You might have that opinion, because I have had people that have come to me as clients who are very gifted herbalists who have heard people use the word magic in a different way than you would use the word magic with plants. And they've come to me and said, God, I wanted to be an herbalist, but I'm not a Wiccan, so I can't do it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, how you worship all that is, whether it's the land or God or your lucky rabbit's foot or good intentions, or you're a humanist or whatever your deal is, what's that got to do with plants and magical properties of plants? And there have been some people who had some pretty big trips put down on them that you don't use herbs unless you are a practicing Wiccan in order to go through the ritual magic that is completely separate from what we're talking about here. So the reason that I brought this forward is that can be a confusing point for people. And then Melissa, and I've just heard you say a million times, plant magic, and I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah,
it's plant mojo. It's plant spirit. I'm totally down with that. I get what you're laying down. Yet and if you are a Wiccan person and you use these plants in a ritual, that's fantastic. Yet no, gang, especially if you're hearing Melissa talk about plant magic, it's not saying you have to go be a 6th level, Wiccan practitioner before you can actually be an herbalist. One does not necessarily have to do with the other.
That's true. And that's like a whole nother podcast we're talking about here. But
that's true.
I think that, but that's not to say that you can't do plant magic too. Plants are magical. And if you want, you don't have to be a Wiccan to use the spiritual qualities of plants. We use plants for all sorts of things, and we use them as well for focusing our intention.
That's
which
right.
is basically the same thing as magic.
Right. Or prayer. Same dang thing. Same dang thing. Mm-hmm. So, geez, I can't believe we blew through this hour. Can you believe that?
That was so fun.
I know, right? And so what I want to do is I want everybody to have an opportunity to reach out to Melissa, because Melissa Siana is very versed in her field as far as herbalism, healing, in terms of plant magic, or the energies of plants, if you're more comfortable with that terminology. I even know some Wiccan friends that are getting sick and tired of people. I was saying something was magical the other day, and I got an email from somebody saying, please stop using that, because that's a sacred term to me and, my circle. And when people like you just say, oh, well, that's magical, that's, we're so twitchy about terms these days.
Yes.
And I apologize to my friend, because I really never thought about that. I'm not a Wiccan, or I'm not a druidic magic person. So maybe that's just ignorance, that maybe that was offensive to that gal, whatever. But I just wanted to make sure that, we understood what your definition of it was. Mm-hmm. Just so if people do have, want to talk with you more about how you do it, what you do it. So we're just running a little over time here. Yeah, Melissa, where can people find you online?
They can find me at vintageapothecaryshop.com. They can also find me on Facebook at Vintage Apothecary, on Instagram at vintageapothecary_Melissa Siana. Yeah. And they can find me for a while anyway, in Bridger, Montana, if you ever get out there. So,
and what's your address out there in Bridger?
It's 2503 Highway 310. It's about a mile south of Bridger.
And if somebody's listening today and they're kind of digging, they're feeling your vibration, and they would love to get a hold of you in terms of being a practitioner, because you do phone consults.
Yep.
You do phone consults for clients all over the world. I happen to know you've sent herbs to people all over the world.
Yes.
How do people get a hold of you for a phone consult?
So you can actually make an appointment with me on my website at vintageapothecaryshop.com. And you can also call me and make an appointment that way. My phone number is 406-850-3287.
That is awesome. And if anybody happens to be in the Montana area, Southwest Montana, I would tell you to come see me. I'm going to be down on May 4th, 2019, Saturday from 2 to 4 at Vintage Apothecary. Melissa is hosting a massive angel forum that I'm doing, and I'm going to be bringing through all kinds of information for folks who show up and want to ask questions. You can grab those tickets on my website at DanielleAgnew.advisor.com. So there's a lot going on at Vintage Apothecary. Melissa, thank you for coming
You're
on.
so welcome. It was so fun.
This is super fun.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, go practice your own brand of mysticism, healing, whether it's magic, good energy, or letting your mojo flow. And I will see you next week.